In the 2024 Indonesian drama Bolehkah Sekali Saja Kumenangis, which translates to May I Cry Just Once?, a young woman named Tari navigates a stifling, abusive household dominated by her father. The film traces its roots to the indie pop hit Runtuh by Febi Putri and Firsa Besari. The song struck a massive cultural chord by advocating for something quite simple, the normalization of expressing sadness. Media scholars are currently dissecting this story through a sociological lens, treating the family's domestic struggles as a map of cultural codes regarding power and control. To decode what's really happening on screen, we can borrow the analytical frameworks of cultural theorists like Roland Barthes and John Fiske. They argued that popular media is never completely transparent. Films act as delivery systems for societal codes. This diagram illustrates how that deconstruction works. To truly understand the weight behind Tari's tears, we have to peel back the film's three distinct layers of meaning, moving from literal reality through technical representation into the underlying ideology. The first layer in this semiotic analysis is denotation. This is the literal reality presented on screen, the raw events and dialogue exactly as they happen. At this level, the plot is grim. We see a dysfunctional family ruled by a temperamental father named Pras, who frequently uses physical and verbal aggression against his wife and daughter. We also observe the literal reactions of his victims. Tari and her mother constantly cower, retreat, and fail to communicate their pain to each other, opting instead to endure the abuse in absolute silence. At this surface level, the viewer processes a narrative about a specific father and a broken home. But films are constructed. That brings us to the second layer, connotation. Here, we look at how the director uses technical filmmaking tools to inject psychological subtext into those literal events. Consider how this encroaching shadow suffocates a brightly lit room. In the film, specific camera angles and harsh lighting techniques operate the same way, transforming Pros's literal hits into a visualization of heavy, inescapable psychological pressure. Through this technical lens, the father's physical violence transcends the plot. Every outburst becomes a symbol for the total rejection of female autonomy within that household. This rejection builds a toxic, suffocating emotional environment. Tari is forced to put up a facade, pretending everything is normal in her daily life while carrying the trauma of ongoing abuse. The violence operates as a tool of psychological control. It is explicitly designed to ensure the absolute silence of the victims. Which brings us to the final, deepest layer of semiotic analysis, the myth, or the overarching ideology driving the entire system. The film provides a crucial piece of narrative context to get us here. We learn that Pras himself was brutally beaten by his own parents as a child. His violence is an inherited trait. This flowchart maps the mechanics of generational trauma. But the disease fueling the loop is a deeply entrenched system of patriarchy. The characters have internalized a patriarchal myth, the belief that men must absolutely dominate the physical and emotional space of the household. The cultural corollary to this myth is equally rigid. It dictates that women and children must silently submit to this dominance without a hint of resistance. At this level, the father acts as the primary enforcer of a toxic societal structure, one that claims his own humanity while he perpetuates it. Tari eventually takes proactive steps to break this cycle. She seeks out a trauma support group, where she meets a fellow survivor named Baskara and begins the work of confronting her pain. In a society that heavily stigmatizes mental health struggles, seeking emotional health is often viewed as a systemic failure. By framing her journey this way, the film functions as a discursive space, a safe cultural arena designed specifically to expose and discuss collective, unspoken trauma. Reading media through these semiotic layers allows audiences to look past the immediate plot. It reveals that the real antagonists in our lives are often the invisible ideologies and cultural expectations we interact with every day. Breaking a cycle of generational violence requires defying patriarchal rules that demand silence. It requires admitting you are hurt, and finally, allowing yourself to cry.